Anyway, we now come to Luka's Discourse corner. Do we have a graphic for this? Oh right, I fired my producer, so I'm like the only one in the studio right now. I guess we don't have a graphic for this yet, because I haven't made it. All right. So, I'm gonna start things off ostentatiously. This article is objectively correct in like everything it said. Everything. We're gonna read the whole thing. All right. We're gonna read the whole thing. No, the Fresno Nightcrawler didn't kill my producer. I fired my producer because he didn't want me to bring in guests like the Fresno Nightcrawler because he thought they were dangerous. So I fired him. That's what happened. Fresno Night Stalker, yeah, Night Stalker's a completely different thing. Anyway, Metroid Dread was officially released on October 8th, but copies got out into the wild a few days before that. After such a short time, the game is now fully playable in 4K via various Nintendo Switch emulators. This is objectively correct and true. Released yesterday, Mercury Steam developed Metroid Dread. Mercury Steam developed Metroid Dread is the long-awaited 2D return to the Metroid series. I have a beef with this right now, but we'll get there. You can read our full review here, but the short answer, it's a solid game with some nice looking visuals and surprisingly tricky boss fights. It is a Switch exclusive as you might expect, but because of readily available Switch emulators, people are already able to play Dread on powerful enough PCs. Via the popular Yuzu open source emulator, Dread is already possible to play with custom controls and unlimited FPS settings, which is to say more powerfully than it runs on its native Switch. Correct. Some players have reported minor issues with cutscenes and black screens, but according to the Yuzu devs, this is fixed by updating to the latest version of the free emulator. Another popular Switch emulator, Ryujinx, is able to run the game at similarly high frame rates, but can also play it at a much higher 4K resolution. Compared to the native 720 900p resolution available on the Switch in handheld or TV mode, this is a massive increase. It certainly seems a shame that the legitimate versions of the game, its art style and visuals, don't look as good as when it's running in 8K, or for that matter, 1080p. Of course, it's possible that certain areas of the game perform worse on certain PC setups, and depending on your computer specs and software setup, Dread via emulation could be a total shit show. But it seems that for most folks with moderately powerful GPUs, this isn't an issue. This raises huge issues for Nintendo, who are in the very unusual position of having a current-gen console that's already so readily emulated on PC. Normally, console emulation is a generation or two behind, meaning it's a scene that rarely infringes on release day sales. We'll talk about this a bit more. Of course, for those wanting to feel a more legitimate approach to such an action, purchasing the Switch game before doing any such emulation, while legally very dubious, it's not, this is fully actually legal to do. You are actually legally allowed to back up your games on a PC for the purpose of archival. You are allowed to do this. This is legal for you to do. Just so you know. Kotaku was lying to you here in saying that it's legally very dubious. This is legal to do. Just flat out. At least feels more morally clear. Thanks to Nintendo's rather poor approach to supporting older games. Oh my god, they changed it! Thanks to Nintendo's rather poor approach to supporting older games, especially those in the Game Boy Advance and DS, emulation is often the only viable means to play through their collection, and this is the case for much of the Metroid franchise. There are so many good reasons to be grateful for pirates, emulators, modders, and hackers for doing what so many big publishers won't, keeping old games alive. Clearly, that's not the case for Metroid Dread, a brand new game, but this is an enormous issue Nintendo has to face given the relative technical inferiority of its current console. And then they didn't update. So the article previously basically just ended here. This is where the article ended. And then they had to clarify. Because gamers got really mad, and we're going to talk about that. Here's the update. An earlier version of the story was understood by many readers to be a direct suggestion to illegally download this just-released game. It wasn't. It very much was not that. We regret this interpretation. Kotaku believes emulation is a vital part of the world of gaming, not least when it comes to game preservation. while not directly encouraging anyone to break the law and download games they have not purchased. We believe our readers are intelligent adults capable of making such choices for themselves, independently of us. No, they're fucking not! They are very much not, because the people who fucking your readers can't read and don't know what you're trying to say ever. Because you're not accounting for every minute detail of the lived experience of playing video games. Okay, so we're gonna talk about a few points in this article. So where is the first point that I highlighted? The long-awaited 2D return of the Metroid series. It's not, actually. Let's just do a really quick Google. I'm just typing random characters right now. Don't worry about this. I don't know what I'm typing. Oh, look, there was actually a 2D Metroid game released in 2017 on the 3DS. Huh, that's weird. Huh. How? Huh? Really? Really? That's weird. Because you'd think, just based on the cultural zeitgeist surrounding Metroid Dread, that there hasn't been one of these in a long time. I wonder why. Maybe people don't know that this game exists. When was this released? September 15th, 2017? Okay, I'm just gonna type in another bunch of random characters. Don't worry about this. Oh, look. That's weird. The Switch came out on March 3rd of 2017. So that means this 2D Metroid game came out on the 3DS 6 months after Nintendo released the Switch. That's weird. That's odd. Huh. Why would Nintendo do that? I wonder. Like, it's weird that Nintendo released this at a point where everybody had basically thrown their 3DSs in the garbage, right? Because people just assumed, rightfully so, that new releases would come to the Switch. Instead of the fucked up thing they actually did, which was continue supporting the 3DS, releasing exclusives on it, that would then never fucking come to the Switch, ever. Huh. That's weird. Anyway, we're moving on. There was another point in this article that I thought was questionable. No, I actually talked about that as it came up. Legally very dubious, because this one offended me so greatly that I had to talk about it immediately. It's not dubious. It's not legally very dubious to do this at all. There's precedent for this in court. In fact, hey, did you know that actually emulators are completely legal? And this has been tried in court. With the release of the PS2, there was actually a day one emulator for the PS2 because there were leaked dev kits of the PS2 and people made emulators for it. And somebody took the developers of these emulators to court and they lost. So that's the thing. That's a little fun fact, that emulators are completely legal and that it is completely legal to archive old games or games in general onto a PC for the sake of archival and preservation. So this article expectedly created a lot of discourse on the internet, specifically with the kind of person that is weirdly defensive of Nintendo, which is the weirdest demographic of people on the internet, because Nintendo doesn't give a fuck about them or the franchises that they care about. In fact, Nintendo seems to show nothing but contempt for these people at all times, ever. So there were a few arguments here that Kotaku was praising pirators and modders and fan creators that were doing these things with Nintendo games. They should be. They should be doing this. Because Metroid, as it exists now, wouldn't exist without pirates and emulators and modders and fan creators. It simply wouldn't. Nintendo doesn't make these games accessible at all. Ever. You cannot play all of the Metroid games on the Switch. You need a Wii U a 3DS, a Switch, a Wii, and God knows what the fuck else. I think a DS to play all of the Metroid games. Because Nintendo has elected to take them away from people and not make them available. Did you know this? Did you know that they've done this? That they make this decision to do this every single day? To rob you of the experience of playing Metroid? No, Metroid Prime 1 through 3 are on Wii. Metroid Prime Trilogy is the thing that you can play on Wii. It's really fucking hard to get. It's nearly impossible to get, but you can play it on the Wii. Also on the Wii U, I think. Maybe. I don't know. So, you know what Nintendo did leading up to the release of Metroid Dread? You know what they easily... here's what they easily could have done. They very easily could have just released a Super Nintendo game, a GBA game, a 3DS game. No, 2 GBA games, a 3DS game, and a Super Nintendo game on the Switch, leading up to the release of Metroid Prime, so you could catch up on Metroid and play all of those games. They could have done this. You know what they did instead? They told you to go to pawn shops and buy these consoles and also the games and play them that way. And I gotta say, Nintendo is getting as much money from you pirating and emulating these games as they would if you went to a pawn shop and bought the consoles and the games. Which is to say, zero money. No money at all. Absolutely none. And there is no reason for you to actually go out and do this if you just want to fucking play these games. Plain and fucking simple. Alright? Now, here is another bit of discourse. One person made a better Metroid 2 remake than Mercury Steam did and released officially, legitimately, on the 3DS. Another Metroid 2 remake is better than Samus Returns on the 3DS. It is objectively a better game. It plays better. We can talk to death about how Metroid 2 is maybe not a very good game, but another Metroid 2 remake is just better than Samus Returns. It's also more available because you can just play it on your computer. You don't have to have a 3DS. You don't have to have a copy of Samus Returns on the 3DS. You can just play it on your gosh dang computer, have a merry good old time being Samus Aran, shooting up Metroids. You can just do that for free. You know what else you can do for free? Play Metroid Zero Mission and Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion. You can do that. In fact, I will go so far as to say you should do that. Because Nintendo seemingly doesn't want you to play them. So you can be prepared to play Metroid Dread and know what's happening. Because you can't play half of these games on the Nintendo Switch, on the current console that you own. That would make it very easy to play all of these games, and can run these games easily, and has the infrastructure to do so. Now, another argument I saw is people rallying against ROMs as games preservation. I saw some people say, well, it's a modern game. Why you gotta preserve a modern game? Motherfuckers. You fucking goons. Are you serious? Are you dumb? Do you hear yourselves? Do you actually hear yourselves when you say this? Preservation is not for now. Preservation is for future. Time marches endlessly on, my friends. And soon enough, the Switch will not be the most recent Nintendo console ever made. In fact, eventually it will not even be the second most recent Nintendo console ever made. In the future, Nintendo could possibly not even exist. And you know what? You know how you're gonna play Metroid Dread at that point? You won't. If people do not preserve these games, you simply will not play Metroid Dread, or any of the Metroid games, or any of the Nintendo games at all. If Nintendo were to randomly go out of business in like 20 years, you would not be able to play any of these fucking games at all, if not for people who are actually putting forth the effort to preserve these games. Period. End of statement. End of objective fact. Also, now, there's another argument. I think this is the last one that I'm going to dignify with a response. A lot of people have said, oh, well, Metroid, we don't get Metroid games all that often because they don't sell well, and people emulating them isn't helping. Now, I have two rebuttals to this. The second one being very, very simple. Number one. Fuck, I lost it. Oh, right. There it is. Okay. People who pirate games are not customers. They were never going to be customers. They were never going to buy the game in the first place. Nintendo was not losing a sale of Metroid Dread because people have decided to pirate and emulate it. They simply are not. They are creating a copy of the game and playing that copy of the game. Stealing means taking something away. Removing something and making it yours. That is not happening with piracy now, is it? What is happening with piracy is that somebody is making a copy while leaving the original where it is. You know? These people would not have bought these games anyway for reasons that are probably plentiful. They can't afford a Switch because the Switch is like $500. And probably won't be able to afford to be able to buy Metroid Dread anytime in the future because the Switch is $500. And sometimes people just don't have $500 of liquid income because they would probably need to spend that on on food, on rent, on living, you know. Those people, in my opinion, in my objectively correct opinion, deserve to have entertainment as much as everybody else. And if the only way that these people can have fun and be entertained is playing video games, yes, I am okay with this. This is fine. Now, counterpoint 2. Do you know how fucking much people pirate and emulate Mario games and Zelda games, Final Fantasy games, Dragon Quest, all that shit, all these really, really popular, long-running franchises, all of these that are still going on and are very popular and make shitloads of money? A lot. Way more than people will ever emulate a Metroid game. Ever. Period. And yet, weirdly enough, Mario has an entire park at Universal Studios and is going to have a movie. And we got a massive open world Zelda game a couple years ago, and we're having another one. And Final Fantasy XIV exists and continues to rake in money for Square Enix. And also Final Fantasy 15 was like one of the biggest budget games ever and sold really well. Now that it's actually good and they fixed it and made it, they just injected a bunch of other games in there. And also Dragon Quest 11 exists and is really good, and Sugiyama is dead now, so Dragon Quest is thriving finally. And also Metroid Dread has been selling a lot anyway. Exactly. Hey, did you know? Did you know that Nintendo is the richest corporation in all of Japan? Did you know that? That's a fact. They were the richest corporation in Japan in 2020. And guess what? They were the second richest corporation in Japan in 2019. I don't think they really need a whole bunch of people on Twitter going to bat for them because a few people have decided, oh yeah, I'm just going to emulate this game. You know? I don't think that's necessary. I want everybody to destroy this illusion they have of Nintendo, of the scrappy underdog who's constantly fighting to stay alive. They're not. They are the most rich corporation in the entirety of Japan. Alright? They don't need you. They don't like you. They never, Nintendo doesn't like you people. Nintendo likes you people as little as other people on Twitter like you. Anyway. I've lost all of my points. They're all gone now. I think the news is done. Is the news done? Oh yeah, Sora's in Smash now. So that's cool. I don't really care about Smash. Sora's in Smash. Kingdom Hearts is pretty alright, I guess, right? That's cool. Anyway, fuck Nintendo. And fuck Nintendo fanboys. Is that all I have to say about that? Yeah. Yeah, just fuck Nintendo fanboys and Nintendo. Just in general. I'm gonna say right now, you should pirate Nintendo games. You can. You can do that. It's something you can do. I'm not gonna say that I endorse it, but I think it's okay to do that. Because who the fuck is it hurting? Right? Nobody. Do it. If you want to play Super Mario World on your computer or on your phone, do it. Nintendo's not gonna make any money. Anyway, if you buy a quote-unquote legitimate copy of Super Mario World, who gives a fuck? But play that shit on your computer or your phone. Just do it. Who gives a shit? Fuck off, Nintendo fans. You're dumb. Anyway, that's the news. Why am I antagonizing Nintendo fans in the literal second broadcast of this news show? That's gonna go poorly. Alright. That's the news. I have no more news for you.